Good morning and a warm welcome. Is my mic on? Good morning, everybody, and thank you for being with us here today. Just to calm my nerves and maybe also your nerves, what I did, I watched a lot of Oscar and award ceremonies, and I thought, how does a program director deal with that? So Peter Chavez had a glass of beer. That helped him. I just have a lot of pieces of paper. I didn't eat, and last night I just woke up, and I thought, oh my God, the wrong dress, the wrong belt, the wrong shoes. But then I really realized, Julia, it's really not about you. People are gonna forget you, You're not even gonna rewatch this. So I hope everybody is comfortable. And I'm happy to welcome you all to the Services SETA Annual General Meeting. And on behalf of the Accounting Authority, I thank you all for joining us today. And I believe your presence here is testimony of your interest and support to the Services SETA. My name is Julia Tebohon Zimande, and I'm a member of the AA. And I am, as you might have noticed, your program director for today. And this is what I've got from the Oscars. And we are live from the West Cliff Four Seasons in Johannesburg. And then usually clap and... But before we start, in an unlikely event of an emergency, please follow our ushers, and they will lead you to a place of safety. For the people at home, you're at home, and I hope you're safe too. I will begin by introducing some guests here today, not in any particular order, but Mr. Mudau from the SAS SETA, Security SETA. Thank you very much for joining us. Mr. Tobela from the MICT SETA. Thank you for joining us today. And if there's anybody from the Department of Higher Education online or with us, thank you for joining us too. Then, in also no particular order, I'd like to introduce my fellow AA members. And in the room today, of course, we have our chairperson of the AA. If you could please stand up, Mr. Steven de Vries. Then, no particular order, but I'll start with all the ladies in the room, and I'd like to introduce Miss Nokolo Kogo, if she's here. Miss Alice Karanja, could you please stand up? Miss Rendani Glamini, if she's here, please stand up. They're probably online. Miss Jackie Ford, who is online and who will give us the vote of thanks. And Ms. Novundu Ngoy, who's also online, and those are the ladies who constitute the AA. These are the ladies who constitute the AA because, like I always say during meetings, sometimes when you want to have things said, ask the man, but if you want to have things done, ask a woman. But I do want to introduce our gentlemen. Mr. Wiseman Dinwa, he's probably online. Asif, Andrew Mandela, he's here. Thank you. Mr. Shadrach Mushung, if you please could stand up. Temba Mtsweni, probably online. And Mr. Kevin Cowley, also online. Those are the AA members. The executives, of course, I will start with Mr. Menzi Fakuda, our CEO. If you could please rise. Mr. Matsebe, Chief Financial Officer. If you could please rise, thank you. And Ms. Motha, could you please, Executive Manager, Strategy and Planning. We are also joined today by Ms. Nana, a Senior Audit Manager from the South African Auditor General. She's probably online. And we are joined by our chair of the audit committee, Mr. Rabotata, if you could please stand up. Last but not least, chairperson from the Community College in the Western Cape, Mr. Theismann. Thank you for joining us today. Let me look at the time, but I will say everybody else, all protocol observed. It is now exactly 8 minutes past 10, and I had 10 minutes to do this, but a quorum is present, and I hereby formally declare the meeting opened. So it's been more than 2 years or 3 years since we've been able to do this hybrid AGM, and it's always good to be back and to see more of you attending. And in fact, we have learned that a lot of shareholders really enjoy participating virtually, so we've decided to keep it exactly as that. So I'd like to give a special welcome to everybody joining us online today. If you look at the agenda, there was a 10-minute welcome and opening remarks by myself. Then I will hand over to the chairperson for the chairperson's address. The annual report will be given by Mr. Mezi Fakunde, the CEO. Presentation by the CFO, the Auditor General. Recommendations will be given by our Executive Manager, Strategy and Planning. And then there is an adoption of the Services SETA annual budget and plan, and question and answers to be followed. And I'll only be back when there are questions and answers, so just bear with me a few more minutes on stage. I'd like to say we meet in very uncertain times. It is uncertain politically, but I won't go into that. I myself, like my president, were going through the notes last night. It was extensive reading. The pandemic might have receded just a little bit, but it continues to be a threat in many countries. As we know, China, it is very volatile. So even for us, because we have a lot of sectors that deal with people, please take care. We call it touch. Please take care, wear a mask, and do sanitize. The Russia's attack on Ukraine has had also consequences, tragic consequences, but all over the world we have faced businesses and households with energy shortages, record high prices, market volatility, supply chain disruptions, and widespread inflation. On top of all of that, in our country, we are still faced with the triple challenge, the challenge of poverty, inequality, and a huge number of unemployment. And again, here, I didn't want to give any figures. So where do we sit at the Services SETA? Faced with all these circumstances, the contribution of the Services SETA must make clear that we are needed. We must continue to fulfill our mandate and our mission, and that's why we're here gathered today to present to you how far we've come and how excited we are. The following quote I used during a stakeholder visit recently, and it had resonance. And before I hand over to my chairperson, I will share it again with you today. It's a proverb, and it goes, if you're planning for a year, sow rice. If you're planning for a decade, plant trees. But if you're planning for a lifetime, educate people. Thank you very much. Chairperson.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome. Also, I had to welcome you all to this event. This morning and last night, I received some messages. Good luck for today, and and hope that it's going to be. And don't be tense, and So then I think that it seems that some people confuse the AGM of the SETAs with another type of AGM and conferences that normally take place that are tense, and there's meetings before the meeting. Because we're actually coming here to come and report to you, and then also to engage with you as our stakeholders. So this is actually part of our stakeholder engagement. So that other tension, so I responded to one message this morning. I said, no, there's no tension, because we are not going to elect anyone. We're not going to elect anyone today. I was also told to say that, look, there's another important meeting that will take place today, so can you please just finish very early? Because apparently some have inside live feeds that they will get while the meeting is going to take place. So in line with the outline of the by the program director, you'll find that there's actually there's quite a number of presentations, so I'm not going to bore you in terms of that. And Julia have already set the background in terms of where we come from. I think that this is our second year, or second AGM for this current, for this board's term, and this is our second AGM that is taking place. It's also the second year of the National Skills Development Plan 2030. Now, for most part of the 2021, there was this cautious optimism that the COVID-19 pandemic have passed. And we again were reminded of the nature of the pandemic towards the end of the year, as again there's some spread. Currently, we are told that the Western Cape and Gauteng, actually we again have increasing numbers, and hence we causes people again to, while we are not telling you to go back into your lagers and then lock yourself up, that actually that we need the space for our economy to grow. As we just came out of the COVID pandemic and our economy was busy recovering, as the program director mentioned, we have this conflict in Europe. And whether we like it or not, but it does have an impact on us here in South Africa. Our economy, and especially our service economy, have shown some promising signs owing to the presidential interventions, such as the Economic Reconstruction and Recovery Plan. And this has resulted in terms of our skills level revenue and also the participation of our employers that have actually increased. And we measured that by the number of our work skills plan and also about our annual training reports that are submitted to the service SETA. So for us, it indicates that businesses are operating in the sector, are returning, or some of them at least, to maximum operations, and possible and hopefully that profits again are starting to rolling in. It's again this background that we have witnessed a renewed active participation of our service sector players. And we believe that working together, we can do more as a sector. Now, in the 2021-22 financial year, we have received an 80% performance as the SETA. Now, that is double our performance in the previous financial year that was only at 40%. Yeah, I think that needed applause. Because that say a lot also about the participation of yourself as stakeholders in the sector. There was also an increase of the year before that in terms of 7%, because I think at that stage we were, the previous financial year, we also reported 7%, then it was 40, and now it's an 80. And we will strive together with you that we will reach 100% in terms of our performance. And this is due to yourself as stakeholders and to our dedicated staff. I must say that. There was a lot of pressure on the CEO and his team and executive, and together with the whole staff establishment, they have responded positively in terms of that. And we hope that together that we will, as the AA, appreciate that and support them. I always tell the CEO, tell us what you need, and as an accounting authority, our responsibility is to support you. But on performance, the other presentations we will show you in terms of how we have increased. But this have included that we, in terms of our number of enrollments with learners, I will speak later about something else that people think, but there's nothing happening, there's no windows. But we have 14,000 learners that were enrolled during that process. We have done some work when it comes to SME development and co-ops. And with our interventions, we were able to support over 900 of them during the sector. Because we believe that it's important that while we are training our young people, it's important that we should not just talk about to find a job. And I think all SETA programs, irrespective of whichever sector, we should build in the issue about entrepreneurship. Because otherwise we are training young people to become unemployed, and that's it. And our economy is not going to grow if we are not going to make sure that they start their own businesses. So it should not be about 115,000 learners in the program. It must be also about what are the learners going to do afterwards. And I think that we must do together. The Auditor General, unfortunately, gave us a qualified audit, but we, together with management, will work together in terms of strengthening our financial controls and our performance management practices. And we are committed in terms of turning that around. One of the measures the CEO and the CFO will talk about it is the issue around our commitments. Some of my colleagues or friends have started to call me Mr. Commitments. I'm known, and yes, one of them sitting here in front that I've invited. When I start to explain to them the position that the seat that we found ourselves when we took over as a board, and they say, but why are you not opening up windows? And I have to explain to them about the commitments. And again, in the report you will hear that we were able to bring down our commitments at the stage when we took over from around 4.5 billion to around 2.6 billion in the last 2 years. And that, I think, needs some applause around it. And I want to thank the CEO and his management team in terms of doing that. We call something in terms of, so people are asking, but how did you do it? We said, without having windows. We're sitting with commitments. It's like a debt that you owe someone something. And we have to align that with our APPs. So every year, our management, they will come with us to a plan and say, this is how we're going to achieve our APPs. This is how we were able to reduce our commitments. And also, our audit committee, in terms of their oversight role, have also assisted us in moving forward. So they will speak about the issue around our commitments and how we're going to be able to sort that out, because that remains one of our qualifications, the findings from the Auditor General. But there's one thing that the chairperson of the mixed SETA mentioned in his AGM, and that's the issue that we must talk about, chairpersons at the governance level, is the issue around the regulations. And the impact of the regulations in terms of the 10.5% and the 7.5%. Because some of that we will remain to have irregular expenditure in terms of that. The CEO always explained it very nicely in terms of what changed, in terms of when the grant regulations also changed in terms of the 2080 and that. And then when you find an organization that output had to be doubled with the same number of staff. And the response was actually then to increase your capacity. But now, as things turn back to normal, actually what's happening now, you are above that. And we are not in the space where we can just go and say, reduce your staff complement. We are not going to do that. We must find a process, but part of it, of course, we must manage it internally, but I want to support him, and hopefully when we meet next time as the chairpersons, that we raise it sharply with the minister, that there's a structural issue, that's the word the CEO always mentioned. The structural issue must be addressed, because otherwise we will still have unqualified reports, but we still will have that qualification. So, as the accounting authority, we have agreed on 5 strategic medium to long-term focus areas. And I'm just briefly going to mention that because that will come also in other presentations. And one of it is this inter-SETA collaboration and with the industry partnerships. And that's why it's important for us as SETAs to work together. We have a number of MOUs in place, but not only MOUs. We actually have programs in place that's already being rolled out. The MSC SETA is one of them. There's one program together in Athlone and Philippi that we're working together. I think there's another one somewhere else. I don't know what it. Food Bev, the construction SETA, the wholesale and retail SETA, and the CAT SETA. Those are the SETAs that we have programs together. So at times we can't do everything, but working together we can have a bigger impact in the area. So even if it means we can only give 50 learners, another SETA can give 50 and another can also give 50 in terms of, so that's how we believe that we should move forward. Chairperson of the SETA, you must understand that there's a reason why we have invited you here. Next year when we report, then we will then also report on our collaboration that we will start. And as I think that I saw, apologies. So, the second one for us is to secure workplaces. In my other life, I'm also still a freelance facilitator. And one of the sad things is at times that our learners, once they finish with the first part, they are not placed. So they walk around in the street without receiving their certificate because they can't, because they were not placed in the workplace. I still feel sad about a lady that have already opened a business there in Neisner, and she still don't have a certificate because they were never placed. But without that, actually, they actually were able to start a business. But there's others that are unemployed, and because there's no workplaces. So it's important for us to make sure that we find workplaces. And the only way for us to do is to work with our levy payers and with the employers, because that is where the workplace is going to be. So it's important. So again, to management, I know there's a lot of meetings that they had in terms of ensuring that we secure workplaces for our learners. The last one that I want to mention, I'm going to skip the others, is we are looking at implementation, what is called organizational-wide monitoring and evaluation framework. Part of it is to improve performance. But for me, the part that's important is to track what is happening to our learners. I've bragged about 14,000, whether it's 10,000, 5,000. But can we report back what is happening to them? So at this stage, our systems, it's about output and not outcomes and impact. I'm not even want to talk about impact. So what happened to those learners? So we started as the service system with through social media, trying to trace some of our learners. Because now here's the problem. You talk about young people who change their cell phone every 3rd month. So if you're going to try to look for them after 12 months, you are not going to find them. So you won't be able to report back in terms of what have happened to them. So I think we must find innovative ways and put our collective heads together to ensure that we can actually report back. Because that's what the chairperson of the portfolio committee asked us in one meeting. I would like you to come and talk to us about what happened to those learners that you have trained. Okay. Not just only the numbers that we train, but how many have found employment, how many have started their own business, and how many people did they employ. And that's when we can start to talk about impact. So as the industry, when the stakeholders meetings, we'd like you to please to be part of that and support us in doing that. So the NSDP requires us to join and hold hands to build this future. And our thing as the accounting authority will be in terms of collaboration, as I already mentioned, the partnerships. We are also going to work with our TVETs, and we're already working them in the community colleges in terms of forging closer relationship in terms of rolling out programs. We are also continuing with the capacity building of the TVET and the CET colleges to ensure, and also with the partnerships, and I want to thank some of the SETAs that are not here, to help our skill centers to be operational. Part of the programs that the Silver SETA had, previous boards have decided was to build skill centers. And although people will say, but that was not your mandate, but the argument at the time was that there was a call to roll out training in rural areas. Now, how do you roll out training in rural areas if there's no skill centers? So yes, you had this APP. So the Silver SETA at the time across the country in rural areas have built some infrastructure. So some of them are operational, others are not. And for us to make sure that it doesn't become white elephants is for you in the room to work together with us and other SETAs, so to make sure that actually those things work. So as we are opening, I will invite some of the chairpersons here in the room to come with us and make pledges. But I'm going to warn you before the time. I'm not going to call you to the stage and then ask you to make a commitment. I saw that happen before, where the chairpersons or CEOs were called to the stage and said, what are you going to offer to? No, I won't do that. I will warn you before the time and say, can you please come and make a commitment when we cut the ribbons in some of those centers. So let me skip and just go to the issue about our governance issues and just talking about our chambers. We are seeing our chambers as part of our governance structure, but also part of stakeholder relations. Because that is where we meet with industry on a regular basis. And that's the space that we must use in terms of to engage. So I want to thank our chairpersons of our chambers. They decided to come together, have a discussion in terms of how to improve actually the engagement within the chambers. Because they have noticed over a period of time that people come to the meeting, they attend, and they leave the meeting and they never talk. And actually they are representing industries in that. So they then decided to have actually capacity building. It was a request, especially from the side of labor, to say, look, yes, we want to participate, but assist us to participate. So there was some training, or first in terms of them understanding the environment, and also they have requested other training to take place. They have also changed their agendas now, that there's a space on the agenda standing item for all the different stakeholders in the chambers actually to report. So now it puts on them pressure to go back to the industry and come and report, because that is what they're doing there. They're not representing themselves, they're representing that. So for us, and those reports come directly to the accounting authority, we engage in terms of the proposals, and we take forward. So apart from the other engagements that the CEO and other IMs will report on, that for us is also a very important structure, and those reports, as I say, comes directly to us as the AA. So, in conclusion, as we continue our journey, we will focus on our processes in terms of service delivery, integrate our technologies, ensuring that we build our capacity in terms of our people, managing our risk, and ensure in terms of that we comply. Now, compliance is a dangerous thing, because then we just tick the boxes. But it's still important that we do comply. Okay. But we want to be innovative, and we want you to be part of that. We will continue to align our delivery to focus more closely on the needs of employers in the needs of the service sector industry, who are our primary stakeholders. I talked to some of them outside, and we were accused, and still accused in the past, that we sometimes forget about one of our primary stakeholders in terms of our sector and the employers. So as we move forward, we will make sure, we already started, that we align our delivery to focus more on our employers and the people within our industry. It doesn't mean that we are not going to concentrate on some of the programs that we are currently busy with. Of course, we will get involved with the presidential programs, whether it's the ERRP and other Prudential Youth Employment Programs. We will still work with our public institutions and so forth. But our primary stakeholders is very important in terms of working with them. So, ladies and gentlemen, I was told that I have 15 minutes, but I don't want to use it. I've reduced and I skipped a few pages. Thank you very much, and thank you also for the time that you have taken to come and join us. Thank you.
Greetings, I am Dineo Bendile and this is the Services SETA News Bulletin. Our bulletin today highlights some of the key skills and community development projects undertaken by Services SETA to maintain and grow the strength of the services sector. Services SETA plays a critical role in promoting employment and economic growth by supporting the country's need for skilled and productive labour. One of the ways to achieve this goal is through the construction of skills development centres in various communities across South Africa. We start by taking a look in KwaZulu-Natal, where in September this year, Services SETA began construction of the Mkhuze Skills Centre in the small town north of the province. The centre is expected to be completed in September 2023, whereafter it will be handed over to the Mtachana TVET College. Meanwhile, in the Free State, the Motero National Artisan Academy continues to be the country's pride as it contributes towards the development of artisanal skills. In April this year, President Cyril Ramaphosa visited the centre as part of the presidential Imbizo, where the college showcased its now functioning hairdressing business incubator. Services SETA takes pride in being the funder of this prestigious centre. One of the key components of SETA programs is work-based learning, a process through which employers provide learners with opportunities to complete their training and be job ready. In the services sector in particular, work-based learning can be challenging as many businesses are informal. To combat this difficulty, Services SETA has teamed up with Westphal TVET College, Don Bosco, as well as with beauty industry experts Wall and Jabu Stone. Through the partnership with Jabu Stone, learners gain real-life experience working with clients from the community of Davidton in Gauteng's East Rand. Wall's barber program, on the other hand, teaches barber skills to inmates at correctional services facilities with the aim of restoring their dignity and helping them integrate back into society.
My name is Jabu, the surname is Stone. We are in a school where you find people living with disability. I'm in product manufacturing and I've got salons as well. And also I'm accredited by Services SETA for learnership up to level 4.
I was very excited to see a container of African natural hair preservers because I, for one, don't have a place where I could go to do my hair in the community. It's always these pop-up salons and they really did not know or have any knowledge of hair. So I was very excited to see Wuti finally someone that has knowledge of hair, someone that knows our African hair, and a place that we can come and do our hair.
My relationship with Services SETA goes a long way because, SETA, they are custodian of the hair and beauty industry. So they are the ones who give us direction in terms of training, accreditation, so my relationship goes as far as when they visit other provinces, I would be part of the delegation going to those provinces whereby I talk about manufacturing to young people, talk about learnership, talk about those who are interested in hairdressing in terms of salon business.
Jabu Stone had most of multi-salons where he trained people himself. So whenever you've done hairdressing, he will come to the salons and train us and things like that. And I was lucky that I trained in one of his salons in Yeovil.
Today we are here in Debiton in this container, which is an initiative by Services SETA. It's a fully fledged container with the full equipment. And then I suggested that we bring it to Debiton, the space where we find people living with disability. Because in most cases, people with living disability, nobody cares for them. So to me, it was very, very important to come and host the container here. Our goal is to train at least 70% of people living with disability, 30% able-bodied, because this container is a container for those neglected people. So hence we decided to come here. Talking to Services SETA, yes, they endorsed the whole idea, hence they approved that I could come and house the container here in this school.
I'm Father Emmanuel Kanuma, and I'm the center manager here at Don Bosco Educational Project. Hairdressing that you see here behind me is accredited with the Service SETA.
I started here in 2017, and the first class that we actually start was in 2018 with SETA, with Services SETA. It's a 6-month course now, so it's a half qualification, of which I'm giving them 10 unit standards now instead of 13. We take from the age of 18.
History of these two containers go back to 2016, which took 2 containers and converted them into 2 beautiful salons, fully equipped by Service SETA. Reason why they provided this was to have the hairdressing program whereby we don't need to send our learners outside for extra practicals.
Well, this container has actually impacted a lot on me because it actually taught me what it feels like to be in a real salon, and with that my skills actually implement the salon. And out there I do have a few salons that I went to, but they weren't well structured, they weren't well organized as well, and also they were a bit messy, sorry to say, but they were a bit messy and I didn't know the cleanliness that comes with hairdressing. And when I got here and I learned the sanitation in hairdressing, that's when I actually realized that it's actually more to hair than your health as well. So there's a lot of aspects in hairdressing as well that combines, and I did not know that. So that actually impacted a lot on me because I learned a lot.
The same course we're giving here for the 6 months in the amount that we're paying right now, I'm telling you, it's almost for free they're getting it here. So I can say this containers and this Don Bosco, it's a bonus for our community.
So whoever have been here, normally we encourage them not to wait for somebody to hire them. They can start from their home, and that is one of the encouragement from the facilitator. So the very fact that they go from here fully equipped, ready to work, they can work from home.
In the Western Cape, Services SETA, in partnership with the University of Cape Town, is transforming the personal care subsector by training cosmetic formulators and building a first-of-its-kind testing center for beauty products. This program is an advanced diploma specifically designed for BSc graduates by Professor Nonhlanhla Khumalo, Head of Dermatology at UCT, alongside Dr. Nicole Foster and cosmetic formulator Ndombi Seshi. Graduates of this program, who are funded by Services SETA, have been able to create more lucrative career paths for themselves following completion of their advanced diploma. Seeing these graduates employed by major corporations or starting their own cosmetic brands gives us confidence that together we can make an impact and create employment.
Hi, I'm Jacinta Singh. I'm a postgrad cosmetic formulation science student from the University of Cape Town's Hair and Skin Research Lab. One of the reasons I decided to study through this is because I just didn't want my own brand of skincare. I wanted to understand the ingredients and everything else that went into it. Everything from compliance and to safety of the ingredients and the products that you produce. So there's a lot of other things that I learned during the time of that I was studying cosmetic formulation science. We did everything from hair biology, skin biology. We got to intern. I was interning at a cosmetic a contracting manufacturer. Got to develop some pretty cool, amazing products as well.
Despite the vast array of career fields to choose from, many learners remain unaware of the available opportunities in fields such as fashion, beauty, photography, or film. The solution to this has been the Heritage Careers Expo, which Services SETA managed for the second consecutive year in 2022, alongside other SETAs. The Expo is the brainchild of Deputy Minister of Higher Education and Training, Deputy Minister Buti Manamela. The Expo encourages learners to take up careers in creative industries and those that contribute to South Africa's heritage.
In the past, many young people, when they want to be involved in these sectors, they were told that these will not really help in putting food on the table. Hopefully through this, we can be able to spark some of you and your interest to try and pursue careers in this area.
Heritage e kopana ka tsela ya hore mosebetsi ko etsa o netswa khale ke bagolo ha se batho ba bangata ba nahana hore mosebetsi ko etsa o ka tlisa phethoho maphelong a bona.
The 3-month expo was launched at the Motheo TVET College in the Free State and ended at the Majuba TVET College in KwaZulu-Natal. Through the expo, Services SETA showcased careers in hair, makeup, funeral services and public relations. We thank industry experts and employers including Blush Academy, Jabu Stone and L'Oreal who helped showcase these careers. For Services SETA, this is Dineo Bendile. Services SETA, develop and grow.
And now to give the report on the annual performance of the Services SETA, the Chief Executive Officer, Mr. Menzi Fagute.
Good morning, Program Director. Do I still have an hour? Okay. Good morning again, stakeholders, Chairperson of Services SETA, and all the board members. I just would like to say all protocol observed. When I joined Services SETA, I was told that you cannot run away from trade unions. So I learned from that day that I should be very people-orientated. Program Director, when you introduced my executive team, you put me in a very difficult position. Stakeholders, I would like to call upon the other executives that were not introduced so that I can save my job. Yeah. We've got Mr. Andile Spengane, who's responsible for strategic partnerships. We've got Mr. Spusiso Dladla, who is responsible for corporate services. We also have got our core business executive, Ms. Lizelle Koslich. Program Director, please also allow me to introduce all the 253 SETA employees, because this particular session, it's their session. Without them, all the targets and pride that we all want to talk about will not be possible without them. We come from a very interesting era, moving to an exciting one, both as a SETA and as a sector. I think what we not remind ourselves of is why the SETA is in the bigger scheme of things. And I sometimes feel that SETAs themselves, they think that they are organizations that have got their own money that are supposed to do their own things. The context, it's always very, very important in terms of understanding why SETAs in the first place. There's 21 SETAs in the current post-school education and training system. And all those SETAs, they are directed with the same mission. The reason why I'm saying that is that every particular economic activity has been deliberately aligned with a specific SETA. We are one particular SETA that is called General Dealer, if I like, where when every specific sectors have been defined, and then we find ourselves with what is not specifically allocated. I'm sure you will understand that makes us very, very important and also very, very complicated. We've organized ourselves into 6 sub-sectors within the sector. The previous speaker spoke about chambers, and the video reflected some of the wonderful work that Services SETA is doing on the services sector. But I just wanted to acknowledge our sectors, management, business services. It's very, very important that management business services is acknowledged because it's one subsector that contributes to our levy income. We've got real estate, we've got cleaning and hiring, we've got personal care, we've got labor and collective, and we also have communication and marketing. You could clearly see that those are particular different business sectors in terms of our economy. But the reason why I'm making a point that we appreciate that, because I get asked all the time that, what about insurance? Isn't a service? What about banking? Isn't a service? What about financial services and accounting? Isn't a service? They are all service, but the reason why they are not in the services SETA is because they are defined separately. So their priorities should be looked after somewhere else. I would be in trouble if I don't mention or read out our revised vision. Our revised vision is trying to capture the services sector focused. Our vision now, it reads as that a flourishing services sector that will create economic growth and inclusive opportunities for all South Africans. Meaning that we are for the services sector first. And secondly, we are also for the mission of our very government in terms of dealing with the issues of inequality and poverty. It's very, very important that for any SETA for that matter, there will be no activity or pain in our economy that is irrelevant. But what is important is that as a government engine, we are expected to drive a specific agenda, which is in the skills development. It's very, very important then when you have a dream, and then you must have a clear mission. And when you have a mission, you must identify the kind of values that will take you there. I don't want to bore you with our mission. I'm sure you have been reading all these things when you were sitting here. But what is more important that we preach and pray every day is that we are promoting the value of accountability from the accounting authority level, but from management level, we are currently optimizing and improving on our responsiveness, because that has been an issue that our stakeholders experienced in the past. We don't operate in isolation. We operate in an environment which has a lot of challenges. The chairperson spoke in length about the COVID-19 scenario. I won't want to bore you about that again. But we somehow forget that even before COVID-19, we had an economy that was not growing. And we started to experience what is called the recession. And what does that mean for services SETA in particular? We've got a lot of SMMEs operating in our sector. I'm sure you saw in the video, most of your typical hairdressers, by definition, they get even exempt. So we don't even get to count how many we are losing every day because of the economy that is challenged, as the chairperson described earlier. I don't want to talk about globalization as an issue because it also indirectly brings the challenges that are brought about what's happening in Russia and whether USA are increasing rates or not, and also some political instability that happens throughout the globe. But the most important policy issues that I want to talk about is that we need to embrace what is the National Skills Development Strategy 2020 is all about. The most important thing, I always like to relate the story that when we established SETA as government, we thought that we will have enough money to train for economic growth ourselves because employers were not doing enough. Effectively, we took 1% of employers' payroll, we put it into a certain bucket, and we say, we will train the unemployed so that they get included in economic growth. There is evidence in terms of NSDS 1 and NSDS 2 that it became impractical to implement skills development related programs without employers. And there was a response during the NSDS 3 that was trying to call back the employers to put them to be in the middle. The reason why we are here even today, my theme of presentation is basically to beg our stakeholders to be part of the NSDP 2030 because its design, it's putting the employer in the heart of the strategy. It assumes that employers are there at the beginning. It assumes that employers are there in terms of research, determining the gaps in terms of skills that are required in the sector, working with us in developing qualifications, opening their workplaces, and be part of basically the SMMEs that get developed at the end, and also employers that absorb those particularly. So it's a call. I'm not saying this on behalf of the accounting authority, obviously, but it's a call that the entire PSET sector is making, that we cannot continue without employers being central to what we're doing. Occupational qualifications by design, they want you to have a workplace experience. Without it, if you haven't seen the place of work, you cannot call yourself an artisan. It's a design that makes us to work together. I don't want to go and find myself talking about TVETs because most people now think I work for TVETs, not the SETAs. I will leave it there. But let me take advantage because the department, I'm told, is also online and listening to what we're saying. There is agency in dealing with the Busa case because it talks to our regulations. And without dealing with the issue and have appropriate regulations that will assist us to support the very same strategy, we were not going to be able to achieve that. We're going to go around it, but we're not going to be as efficient as we want to do. We've got some serious social issues, but they always say if you have a problem, it also gives you an opportunity. We've got high unemployment, meaning that we are in a better position to create jobs because there are so many people to be absorbed into jobs. I think let me just use this opportunity and highlight to say, MICT SETA in particular, they talk about digitization and all the nice things. And people that are unemployed and unskilled, they always worry, what about me? and this is not meant to be political as well, is you find a country that has a lot of labor as an asset, that spends a lot of time using machines and other things that make sure that those resources that are available are not utilized forever. So we need to find ways in dealing with these social ills so that we can do away with this inequality and poverty. We must not forget who we are, and we must not forget where we are, because otherwise we will move and leave everybody behind and still have high unemployment and also be very highly digitized and advanced as a country, which doesn't really make a serious contribution. We have a problem with the skills mismatch, and that's the reality, and that's the base from where we basically make our planning interventions. Internally, I'm not going to focus on the governance. The chairperson has said a lot, but performance and audit over years has been the two things that people will judge Services SETA on. We are very much focused on building the capacity to deliver the performance that we want. We are organizing our people and make sure that when we go forward, we don't leave our people behind. Those of us who are always leading people, you know that without your people, you can't really achieve much. And I'm glad I'm talking to employers, because you know, even if you have paid a bonus 3 months ago, the situation changes after 4 months. So it's a full-time, overtime job to make sure that when you move forward, you take your people with you. I think what is more challenging today is that our people are in an environment which is affected by unemployment, high inflation, and there's a lot of external factors that affects the morale of our people. As management, we are doing what we could, but these are not solely internal factors that affects them. We've been working on our systems. We have almost a high number of applications that are meant to be working together. We've been working on the integration. We thought the process was going to be easy. It's proving to be very difficult given the kind of language and the methods that were used to develop those applications. But we've been making progress to stabilize our very known LMIS, which is our MIS system. The commitment, I'm not going to say much about it, but it's a biggest factor because it covers the financial element of implementing the strategy. But where we were focusing more, it's the business process improvement. It's twofold. We've got inefficiencies that affects our audit outcome, but also we were building the business process that is meant to deliver occupational qualifications as it is required by the NSDP 2030. Our organizational design, it does organize our people directly, but when we started the project, we were trying to find efficiencies given the fact that we were already having an audit crisis. The chairperson said it's a structural problem. But to simplify it, we are spending far beyond the Skills Development Act limit of 7.5% of project support cost. And that has been a serious problem for years. However, those kind of costs are mainly payroll related, so we cannot take a decision to reduce our labor cost because it's an issue of legal or compliance rather than the issue of business need at this particular time. So we took the view that we will make sure that we get the value for the cost that we are incurring. The chairperson said a lot about impact assessment. I'm not going to bore you with that. I just want to take you through the business of the day, which is organizational performance. You know, the beauty about the chairperson speaking first, he takes all the glory about the performance. So I'm not going to say that. We are very satisfied with the work that was done to achieve the kind of performance we achieved in 2022. However, the APP, as it's known, it does not tell the entire story because there are a lot of targets hidden underneath what we achieved. As you can clearly see, we failed to give the Auditor General the books or financial statements that they were happy with. We had a problem of commitments, which in the years, I think it's a couple of years, we failed to provide what is acceptable to the Auditor General to give us an unqualified audit opinion. We are working on it. We actually had agreed with the Auditor General that they start looking at our numbers earlier. The process has already started this year so that we could be able to give them the numbers that they could be happy with. The biggest challenge was that the information is sitting on different systems, as I said earlier. Hence, we are working on integrating the information. The important area of delivering NSDP 2030 has always been on the learning programs. We had enrolled more than 14,000 learners last year alone, which is a significant number. The pain that comes with it, it's very, very difficult to explain. But let me deal with the issue of the targets that we could not achieve. We are still not receiving enough acceptable requests for mandatory grants. We were asking ourselves whether should we be happy about that and get to keep the money that belongs to employers, or should we make the announcement in this meeting and say, employers, if you are entitled to mandatory grants, please submit your workplace skills plans and train your people, and so that we could be able to give the refunds that is due to you by law. I think I must make it clear is that there are conditions that comes with the refund. In a nutshell, it goes back to what I was saying. The Skills Development Act was meant to get employers to train, and also if they are not training, to get SETAs to find other ways of training, so that should there be economic growth, and then we should have enough skill available on our side. So we as a SETA, we are doing something, trying to assist the 628 employers that did submit last year but did not meet the expectations. So we will be approaching those 628 employers that we could not approve their WSPs for the refund, so that they are able to get what is due to them in the next cycle. We also fell short on the number of buses that we needed to fund, but we only fell short on the group that was continuing by 7%. We also had a challenge, although we were able to complete 4,518 learners, but we were not able to meet our target, given the fact that we were already coming from the era where our commitments were far exceeding our reserves. This is very a statistical kind of a picture to say that out of the 14,000 learners that we enrolled last year, 73% were women and only 27% are males. This discrepancy is being attended to because there is no intention that we should leave all our young men at home and be excluded in this economy, but it's a serious concern. We are also having deliberate programs that are meant to fund programs directed to people with disabilities. We also have been very biased to unemployed people in terms of our funding model. These are the numbers that the chairperson spoke to earlier, that we were able to support 900 SMMEs. I think what is important that the SETAs are doing in the last 2 years is the kind of work that they are doing in supporting the TVET colleges. We've got about 50 colleges in the country, and they've got more or less 250 campuses throughout the country. We've got employers, when we engage with our top 20 employers, that don't really know what is happening at TVETs, and that's a worrying factor. And we also, I happened to have a meeting with one of the top universities in the country, and I spoke to the head of a specific department there, and he was also asking me, what do TVETs do? Yeah. It's a serious concern because our children, they complete matric and they go to TVETs, and the employers on the other side don't know what they are doing. As SETAs, we are guilty because we are directly related to the employers, because the employers pay their skills development levy to us. And TVETs, you're going to see when I talk about the future earlier, that we are not doing them a favor by helping them. It's part and parcel of our agenda. So I'm saying this deliberately because if we are going to be implementing the NSDP 2030, it talks directly to occupational qualifications. So we need to improve our relationships and capacitate the TVETs, and we need to be deliberate about it, especially when we are developing occupational qualification. It's very, very important. The other growing number that I think I should be grateful for to our stakeholders is a growing number of industry-funded projects. We are very, very grateful for, because indirectly what it means that the employers are making use of the mandatory grants or the refunds that they are getting, and they are training their employees so that they become relevant in the ever-changing economy. Yeah. This was supposed to be the only slide that I was going to make, but I'm only getting it now because it responds to a couple of issues. When we started as this current board, we had a challenge where our reserves were fully depleted. They were sitting just around 200 million, but we were having commitments that are sitting at 4.6 billion. Yeah. So when the chairperson told the story, he couldn't tell you how much, yeah, but the discrepancy was that big. So if you were to implement the projects that were sitting there, you wouldn't have been able to pay your service providers that you would have hired to implement the program. So the boards then made a decision to say, regardless of the commitments that we are not pulling away from, but let's engage the stakeholders so that we don't implement although they're approved. So we call them pre-enrollment. So we blocked implementation. So only last year, where we attempted to implement about 504 million worth of projects, because we have grown our reserves over time, and we were able to execute up to 386 million worth of projects from, in the main, the pre-enrollments. I'm sure those that had those contracts, they are very much aware that we started to engage them from the 2022 financial year and activated projects that were approved, some of them in 2018, which we had those cases where some very angry, dissatisfied stakeholders took us to court because they were saying that we are not honoring our commitments. I think it's important, even to those that were thinking about it, just to understand the rationale behind, to say, as a public entity, it could have been irresponsible of us to bankrupt Services SETA. So we got engaged into a project where we are still activating projects, but aligning the programs with our annual performance plan. So we just don't go in any hierarchy and activate projects. We try to target the programs that will make an impact and are very much aligned with what we're doing. Secondly, what we are also doing, we are engaging, we call it rationalization in our language, but the most important thing was to say it does not necessarily mean that if we gave you a project to train a plumber in 2018, do we still need to train a plumber today? Maybe we need an electrician today. So I must also thank some of those stakeholders that we were able to get positive support on when we were asking them to convert from what was originally agreed to what is relevant in our economy today. Because it's making Services SETA to make a very positive impact rather than just to honor an obligation that was there. I think I must also acknowledge that while we were activating projects, we were also engaging our stakeholders to assist us to reduce the commitment. So we were able to make some savings or reductions on the commitments much quicker than we're supposed to, just to have, I would say, an agreement with the stakeholders to accept our plight, and then they agree that we reduced our commitments without suffering any litigation related cost. On this slide, the other story that I wanted to tell, which is very, very important, I mentioned that our mandate is clearly and primarily for the services sector because there are 20 other sectors. The challenge has been that our employers were starting to feel to be like a distant or a cousin when we talk about allocation of grants. And when we look at what we are activating, it is showing that in the pool of commitments, yes, we do implement projects directly with skills development providers, and yes, we do implement programs directly with government entities, but we should be deliberate in the future that most of our programs are implemented via our stakeholders. And the reason is very basic, is that we want those learners to benefit from the workplaces that our levy payers in the sector can provide. So if you go and you are training for a hygiene-related qualification, but you give programs to entities that are not directly related to that, we have experience of suffering from poor workplaces because we give programs to people that are still going to look for workplaces, and then the learning of the learner suffers because the quality then is not as good as supposed to be. Indirectly, I'm saying employers, we are inviting you to open your workplaces so that we can deliver these programs directly through you, because that isn't affecting the quality of our outputs if you are not involved. Okay. Program director, when I talk about the future, I just wanted the truck that moves, and I was promised that my truck is moving, and no, thank you. In a lot of board meetings, I've been accused of having a very stagnant track. It's very, very important as stakeholders that we appreciate the components of the National Skills Development Plan. The most practical plan I've ever seen is that we cannot implement or achieve any of these outcomes without each other. That's basically what it means. From the process of identifying occupations that are in high demand, you cannot get it from anywhere else but from the employers, because it's employers that are planning for growth. You cannot be linking education and to workplaces without employers. So that in it says, stakeholders, this is your strategy, you're part of it. And we need you to come with and be with us and help us implement it properly. We have a mandate to increase access to occupational directed qualifications. Again, it goes back, we are busy developing qualifications so that they talk to what is required out there. I'm sure some of us who are in the post-school education and training, we know that some institutions are still using the same books that were used by us when we were still a tertiary institution. There's been no movement, but employers are doing things differently. It's very, very important that we also align what we are teaching to what is required at workplaces. We are expected to improve levels of skills in South Africa generally. I think this is also important that as accounting authority that there will be cases where we are funding plumbers, and you'll be saying that, but plumbers belong to construction SETA. It's because it's part of our mandate. We need to make sure that we improve the level of skills of SA workforce generally. So whenever there's a need, we need to show up. We are expected to encourage and support worker-initiated training. I don't want to sound like a unionist again. I've sounded a couple of times, but it's not out of our own liking that we need to support unions. It's expected of us. The strategy directs us to do that. We are also expected to support the public college system. As I was saying, that CETs and TVET colleges are dependent on SETAs to build capacity so that they get the recognition that they deserve. They play the role that they're supposed to play in the economy. We are also saying that when we facilitate skills development, there will be two outcomes. There will be employment, and also there will be self-employment, which comes in form of entrepreneurs and co-ops. And again, it's a specific outcome that we need to support. We are also expected to support career development. Our youth is our future, basically, because if we don't tell them or direct them or make them aware of what is available out there when they are still young, it's very difficult to achieve that at a later stage. So you saw in the video, we deliberately partnered with the Department of Higher Education to support the Heritage Careers exhibitions, because we thought that you can never do enough in career development exhibitions. This is the track that when it starts moving, it will take us to 2030, where we are expected, as a key measure, to be producing 30,000 artisans per annum. Yeah. Well, Services SETA Board, I'm sure you're very aware that their term ends at 31st March 2025. They have put this vision in front of themselves to say, when we are gone, we want our stakeholders to be part and parcel of this SETA. They made it clear that in the previous years we've invested in skills centers, but we want those skills centers to be making a difference in those rural areas and change the future of those kids that have access to those skills centers. And they also declared that the business processes that we have today, they will be very aligned to delivering occupational qualifications. The chairperson did not say it very loud that how embarrassed is the board about the qualification audit outcome. But I think I must put it out there is that it's like a thorn in the chairperson's flesh that we've got a qualification this year. And it's one target that this board, by the time they leave in 2025, they want to make sure that they have changed that particular position. And also, they want to also make sure that the learners that are being funded by us, they are absorbed into jobs. And I'm sure stakeholders, you know very well, this talks to you in the main. We really would like to engage with most of you that have got access to workplaces directly or indirectly to find better ways of absorbing learners into permanent jobs after these qualifications. Because when we get criticized as SETAs, we are told to be training for unemployment. So we want to have evidence to say that we are basically getting our learners absorbed into jobs. Lastly, but not least, is that you need to put numbers in terms of making sure that you are making a difference. When our employees are performing well, this board would leave having enrolled 20,000 learners in occupational qualifications. That's basically what we want to achieve by 2025 when this board leaves. Okay. The work that is required to take us there is to develop proper occupational qualifications. Let me just thank some of you that are already part of this particular process. It was impossible to develop qualifications without a development quality partner. So we had a group, a large number of industry experts that are part of us, helping us with even developing the assessments of the occupational qualifications. We had registered 31 occupational qualifications to date, but that number should be more than double by the time 2025 comes. The critical success factor for that, as mentioned, we need to have enough assessment centers. We need to have accredited skills development providers. This is very important for any process of skills development. We need to build capacity together because privately SDPs have been positioning themselves for accreditation to the new occupational qualifications. If I can just direct it to the chairpersons, but this particular work is not being attended to in terms of our TVETs and CETs. I think we need to have ways of looking at that and isolate and prioritize in building capacity for our public entities as well. Also, employers are key in making sure that they get their workplaces accredited for occupational training. It's very, very important that in every workplace you get accredited providers so that they can be able to give our learners a proper education. I have been told to run through this one quickly. The important thing is that we are attending directly to the RPL for artisans so that we continuously contribute to the numbers that the country needs. I mentioned stuff about mandatory grants. We've got the process now that is going to assist the 628 employers that did not get their refunds. We are also going to be opening a window that will meant to test our capacity to deliver occupational qualifications. We believe that throughout this process, we will also be going to be able to see where the difficulties in implementing occupational qualifications, and it will assist us by the time 2025 comes that all the processes will be good and we can be able to implement the NSDP 2030 without any difficulties. Short term, we are gunning for deliberate efforts in terms of making dents to youth unemployment through internships. We are also targeting to make significant impact in terms of the ERRP. I'm glad that my colleague from MIC SETA, Mr. Matumi Matiwane, is here. We look to partner and make the bigger impact than the one that we've made in the past. We also trying to find ways of making a serious contribution towards the adult education and training. I'm glad that the chairperson of the Western Cape CET is here, so they are also our partners in trying to make the dent on that particular one. I've said a lot about partnership with employers and TVETs. It's a never-ending effort because the entire strategy is basically built on that. Stakeholders, program director, that's the end of my 1 hour. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And now for the presentation of the annual financial statements of the Accounting Authority, the Chief Financial Officer of the Services SETA, Mr. Tseula Matsebe.
I guess it's still safe to say good morning. Good morning, Chairperson of the board members, our visitors from other SETAs, colleagues, and our stakeholders. My presentation will cover 4 areas. In some instances, it might sound like a repeat, broken record, but in a different tune. The first part is to touch on the statement of financial position. In terms of our total assets, we realized a 90.19 increase from 889,000 to 1.7 billion. In the main, made of current assets, which increased from 662 to 1.5. And mainly due to the increase in cash reserves as we receive levies higher than we had projected. This is an indication that the industry is really recovering from COVID-19, and also the service sector as well is recovering from its depleted reserves. On liabilities, it's still around the same. Increase from 311 to 338, which is around 10% increase. On reserves, we increased from 577 to 1.3 billion, which is 134% increase. And for the current year, we're projecting that we'll close with 1.7 billion. The issue of reserves operate more like your product life cycle, which goes through the growth, the mature, and the decline. And in our instance, I would say we are on a growth, as the CEO indicated, and the chairperson as well, that when they took over, we had very low numbers in terms of the reserves. So we are at the growth, and when we reach the maturity after, we would have organized ourselves and also rationalized our reserves. Then we'll start declining as we'll be implementing on those commitments. Our commitments compared to the reserves, we reduced from 3.4 to 2.7 billion. For the current year, we're planning to close at around 2.5. In terms of the statement of financial performance, which is your income statement, our revenue have increased from 1 billion to 1.7 billion, made of revenue from non-exchange transactions, which is in the main your levies. As the previous year, the low levies were due to the levy holidays. So this, it's evident that the sector is really recovering. And the other element is on the revenue from exchange transactions, which is mainly your investments, an increase from 14 million to 33, resulting in 132% increase. This is due to the low disbursement on our discretionary grants as compared to what we had projected. Although we were very careful in terms of the budget, our expenditure was higher than what we had projected. In terms of the expenditure, the first one being on mandatory grants, a slight increase there of 64%. As the CEO indicated, our claim rate is still at 50%. Just a slight increase from the previous year in terms of the claim rate. We normally have this discussion with the CEO to say, do we really want to keep our mandatory grants here, or we need to disperse back, of which for me and Lizel is that if we keep here, it means there'll be more money for discretionary grants. So, yeah. In terms of the discretionary grants, we recorded a slight increase of 11% from 464 to 516. One might already see that there's no correlation to our discretionary grant performance of 80% from the 40%. But in the main, our expenditure for the performance that we recorded in financial year 2022 will overlap to 2023 as most of our projects commenced in Q4. So most of our projects are a year to 18 months, meaning the expenditure for those projects will overlap to the current year. And in the main on this was also the bursaries, although we could not meet our targets, but the numbers were higher than what we reported in the previous year, and also on infrastructure projects, as construction activities were suspended during COVID. And in terms of our administration expenses, it's still slightly the same. And on the overall expenditure, increased by 13.9%. And our surpluses, as we were more conservative in our budgeting, as the impact of the COVID-19 could not be reliably is estimated. We're well within our budget. It's just that on the levies, the increase was more than what we had projected. So our surplus, we recorded an increase from 317 to 775. That was on the income statement, Part C, on the statutory disclosure, which the CEO and the chairperson touched on. In terms of the regular expenditure, although we are not proud, we recorded a decrease from 323 to 137 in the current year under review, which is a decrease of 57%. The plan is to continue reducing it than to promise that it will disappear tomorrow, as the CEO and the chairperson indicated that it's a structural issue. We do have controls in place to reduce it. The current status on the regular expenditures that they've been subjected to the loss control review, and we will be submitting to National Treasury for condonation. And from the loss control function, all consequence management process have been initiated and concluded, and there have not been any elements of fraud or criminal intent identified from that process. On the fruitless and wasteful expenditure, we had incurred 1.4 million compared to 1.5 in the previous year. And the 1.4 mainly relates to the 4 litigation settlements, as CEO indicated. Some service providers are taking us to court for not commencing. So this, they are linked to what we incurred in 2021. We're just waiting for the courts to determine the fees that we need to pay. The one can ask a question: are you promising us that for the current year there wouldn't be any? There are still those providers that take us to court. In some instances we win, some we lose. So the ball is in your court for us, for you not to take us to court. As the CEO indicated, it's a sore thorn that we did not get an unqualified audit opinion. We got qualified, which the audit issues were 5, in the main being the discretionary grant commitments. The plan is to finalize the audit on the opening balances by January 2023. The audit has started already, and we also put measures in place that we continuously engage with the AGSA to make sure that areas of differences or disagreements are resolved timeously to avoid situations of us taking the AG to court and all that. The other one, which it's very difficult even to say, maybe I should leave it for last. It's on the late submission of the annual financial statements. We always had plans to submit on the 31st of May. This time around, we could not, due to technical failures on our side. As a process, it's also manual. So for going forward, although this was managed previously, but for the financial year 2022, it has shown us that not everything is predictable. So we're planning to submit our financials 3 days before the due date, so that if there are any technical glitches, we still have enough time to remediate. The other two issues on fruitless and wasteful expenditure and irregular expenditure, the plans in place are linked in the, as highlighted by the CEO, as we are optimizing our processes. We also have an OD process, which would assist in aligning our processes to the NSDP 2030 targets. The implementation of the recommendations from the loss control function and the recommendation to condone. And the other one was on the usefulness of the performance in information, where we had differences with the AG in terms of how we report on our completions. So we had an engagement with them and agreed on the approach, and we have updated our technical indicator descriptors based on our agreement with the AG. And we also implemented the continuous verification of performance information. And also, just to add, in terms of the performance, we're planning to stretch it across the financial year, as we have it. If we only have it, the performance only in Q4, it compromises the verification process. While if we have it throughout the financial year, it will ensure that we verify the information timelessly. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We will be joined online for the report of the Auditor General on the Accounting Authority. Ms. Nana Shai will be joining us. She is a Senior Audit Manager at the that she has been disconnected from the platform, unfortunately due to a network error. I believe we can perhaps move on to the recommendations of the Services SETA Annual Budget and Business Plan by the Executive Manager of Strategy and Planning, Ms. Mamabele Motla.
Okay, yeah, I do still qualify for saying good morning. I was checking, because as per the schedule, I was going to say good day. Let me protocol observed to our inter-SETA collaboration, as the chairperson indicated. We witnessed it by having the other attendees from MICT and SASETA. Let me greet the board members, my colleagues, our stakeholders from the industry, all our stakeholders that are also there in ensuring that we will be able to supply the skills development as per our commitment. I'm happy because the chairperson, the CEO, CFO, they have confirmed that the business plan that I will be presenting is aligned to the vision of the board, it's aligned to the sector skills priorities, and what the board is visualizing by the end of their term. So for me is to then say, how are we going to get there together with you? As per our strategic plan, we are committing, and we are still committed, we've got 4 outcomes. Each outcome is supporting our programs that are included in our annual performance plan. Outcome 1, as a SETA, we are committed in ensuring that we enhance our organization and ensuring that it will be capable to deliver the strategy. CEO spoke about the internal factors which we are building to enable the delivery of our mandate. That's your systems, your people, us developing our own people, making sure that they are capacitated, and ensuring that we've got effective good governance, and we ensure that we reclaim our audit status, have a clean audit come by the end of this term. The outcome indicators I'm sharing here are the board outcome indicators by the end of their term for 24-25. So we are monitoring this on annual basis. Our outcome 2, we are committed in ensuring that the sector will have skills that will be able to deliver their mandates, which is the economic growth, but in doing so, we'll ensure that we enhance our skills planning process. We believe as a SETA that planning is in the center of all. If our plans are not going to be integrated and credible, we will not be able to perform as intended. So it's for that reason that our outcome 2.1, we are committing to have a credible and integrated strategic plans, which will be informed by our engagements with you, which will be informed by what the industry is in need of. We don't regard that as only documents. We believe that they are documents that are meant to service the sector. We are committed in ensuring that we will broaden the partnerships. Chairperson CEO spoke about collaborations and partnership with industry and all key role players. We also are talking about the percentage to increase the WSP submission. From strategy and planning and chambers, I support that we increase the submissions of WSPs, approve them, and we pay back the mandatory grants so that the industry is happy. CFO spoke about him and Lizelle being happy to keep the discretionary grant. I will be happy that we give the industry the mandatory grants because of the nature of skills implementation is that SETAs and employers, we both have a responsibility. Therefore, when the industry in large, they claim back the mandatory grants, it means that we will together be able to implement those. The numbers are a lot. We still have a lot to do as a country. So we are committed to increase. Our commitment starts by increasing WSP submissions, making sure that they are approved, making sure that the industry will then be able to claim. Our outcome 3 in our strategy, we are committed to continuously support entrepreneurs and co-ops. The board is committing a target of 3.5 by the end of their term. We are committed. I spoke to partnership, but then we are also saying, let us have focused interventions that can see us improving our enrollments, addressing skills that are in need, and also the completions for the occupations that are prioritized. So we are saying out of our APP target, we do have targets, but over and above that, we will have focused interventions in ensuring that our targets are focusing on occupations that are in demand. Number of learners that we are committing to enroll by the end of this term is 65,000, for including the previous 2 years and the upcoming 3 years. One will say, if you look at the SETA in the past year, 65,000 is not enough if you compare to the 40,000 that we used to enroll in the past years. But we are deliberate. Because of as a SETA, we want to make sure that the numbers that we are enrolling, CEO chairperson, they spoke about throughput rate. They spoke about absorption. They spoke us about ensuring that the learners we are training, they are for the occupations that are in demand, and we'll be sending them to the industry, and industry will absorb them. So it's for that reason that our targeted number for this board is 65,000. which will include the 20,000 for occupational directed programs. Our fourth outcome is talking about the quality assurance role. As a SETA, we're committing that the numbers that we are enrolling will ensure that we external moderate them. They can exit at the end of the term and be certified. We are committing to increase this number on an annual basis, but by the time the term of this board ends, 85% of the learners that we have enrolled will have been externally moderated, certified, and exited. We are committing to ensure that we'll align our legacy qualifications that are new are identified by industry, and when the term of this board ends, at least 60% of the qualifications that needs to be developed or aligned will be developed. And then the work is continuing as part of the NSDP 2030. The next presentation is to then say, that was a 5-year plan, this year being our 3rd year. How are we going to get there? Supported by each program. Program 1, which is talking that through the first outcome, I just want to highlight one indicator there. The SETA, we are committing to reclaim back, as the CFO is saying, for the next financial year, we are targeting an unqualified audit opinion as per outcome target 1. And the last 3 targets, which I would like to talk to, are our continuous commitment to good governance. We are 0 tolerance in terms of compliance, 0 tolerance in terms of risk, because we are saying we need to make sure that our risk and compliance and audit action plans are implemented. The other outcome I would like to talk to under this program is the stakeholder engagement. That target is not only about the number, but having meaningful and impactful stakeholder engagements. In this new financial year, we are planning to engage at least 160 stakeholders, representing all our key role players, in ensuring that we hear from you, you help us, we guide each other on how to implement this strategy. Program 2, it has 12 indicators. The one I would like to highlight and talk to is outcome 3, which is about the tracer studies. We had our chairperson, we had DHEAD when they said to us, trace the learners and don't wait for too long. The number in the past was high because we were tracing learners for the past 3 years, and it has always been a challenge. But the target is not only about tracing. It says to us, trace and find them employed, find them as entrepreneurs. So the number of 500 we are saying, as we're going to trace our plus 5,000 target this year, so the tracer, we trace the learners that we reported as completion the previous year. Our current target of numbers is 5,000 plus for completions, and we are saying at least 10% of those should be found employed or as entrepreneurs. Hence, the target has reduced to 500. I've spoken to the WSP and ATR's approvals. This is good for the industry because our target is no longer now WSP and ATR submissions, but making sure that we support you with remediations that your WSP and ATRs are finally approved. The other indicators under this program, which is our skills planning program, are supporting what the CEO was talking about on the truck that was moving. CEO, your truck was moving today. But then it supports the public college system's growth. This program, so I'm trying to make a link to say what the CEO and the chairperson were talking about. If you go to our programs, you'll find indicators that are supporting that. In ensuring that our TVETs, CETs are supported as per the outcome 7. We are also committing in the APP to support the career practitioners, to support the learners with career development events, to give the career development workshops to high schools, to also support the TVET colleges. The last one, it talks about the worker-initiated interventions. Yes, labor is important. From a skills development point of view, you need labor, you need business. You need labor in ensuring that you understand the interventions and the skills that are in need from the labor force point of view. And we are, as a SETA, committing to say we need to then, as a result, capacitate our federations and trade unions in ensuring that their value in the work skills plan for their different employers, they can also take part and participate. Hence, we've got that target for the worker-initiated interventions as well. The next indicators are still supporting, from indicator 3.1 to 3.9, 3.2.9, are still supporting public colleges systems. The first three indicators are supporting entrepreneurship and cooperative development. We are committed to support at least 960 entrepreneurs in the next financial year, which is the same number as what we targeted this year. We are still committed to support rural development projects. As a result, we increased that target from 5 to 10 in the next financial year. In terms of our learning programs, our learner interventions target, as we were reflecting on our throughput rate, we conducted an impact study which has shown us that as much as we were commencing large numbers in the past, our throughput rate was only 40%, which then required us to sit back and say, is it just a matter about the numbers that we're enrolling? If when you then try to trace your completions, let alone those that are being absorbed, but those that were able to complete interventions, the number was at least 40%, which we then had to go to certain interventions whereby we had higher numbers so that we can make sure that we understand and we reflect and we consider numbers that can be reasonable. The other element that, I'm talking to the arrows that are showing the reductions. The other elements that we needed to consider is the fact that we are transitioning into occupational qualifications. That alone, it means that the amount of work is not now as we used to continuously commence your traditional qualifications. It requires us to also understand the landscape. We need the employers, as the CEO has indicated. So as a result, it affected our learnerships and skills programs targets, and overall they reduced. The other element that we needed to consider is the fact that we want to make sure that the learning interventions that we are commencing are responding to our sector skills plan, are for the occupations that are in demand. So the numbers were reduced also considering that element. It was very important for me to put those qualitative factors to you. So as you look at our numbers from our current year number, which the total was 19,000, it reduced to an overall number of 17,000. Those were the consideration in our minds. However, we are still committed on internships. We are still committed on artisanal programs. We are committed on bursaries. We consider bursaries programs as one of our national priorities. We are also committed on RPL and ARPL. The numbers for those interventions remain unchanged, with an exception of internship enrollments. The 200 reduction, it's directed to university work integrated learning specific target, because as a SETA, the nature of our sector is that most of our university qualifications don't require work integrated learning. So we had to reduce our overall target there of 500 to 200. It's a sub-target of 3.6. We have introduced a new target, which is CET placement of internships. We are committing to place at least 100 interns to different cities in the country. Our completions target have increased. We believe that we have built enough pipeline to increase our completions targets, as well to respond to that issue I spoke about our throughput rate. This is the summary with the arrows, which shows how we are planning our targets from last year for the current 22-23 to 23-24. We're deliberately increasing RPL and ARPL target from 150 to 500 to address two elements. ARPL is focusing on our artisanal recognition of prior year learning. But again, our sector as services SETA in our nature, we are sitting with informal industries, we are sitting with labor force that is not skilled, so we want to invest in our different sectors on RPL. CEO spoke about our focus on AED, adult education training, and you might be asking yourself that the target is reducing. Am I contradicting with my boss? No, I still need my job. I'm not. It's simply because of, in the past, AED was measured on unemployed. And we realized that the nature of adult education and training is meant for the employed within our sector. That's how DHET measures us when it comes to AED. So the number of 150 years is less, but the nature, how we're going to deliver this program is different as compared to our previous years, hence the reduction. The last program in our APP is Program 4, which confirms what I was saying as per our outcome 4. We are targeting to develop and align additional 10 qualifications with the industry, and we are targeting to increase our certification and statement of results from 80 to 85. Employers, SDPs, you are very important in us ensuring that we can certify, external moderate these learners on time. The process is initiated by you, so we request that in order for us to achieve that, we've been doing very well on that indicator. Currently, we are sitting at 90% on our external moderated learners that we are issuing them with certificates. Program 4 has only 2 targets. Stakeholders, that concludes our annual performance plan, which will be sitting with 52 indicators. But one will then say, how are you going to achieve that and how much are you going to spend to implement that? The total budget for our learning interventions across learnership skills programs, bazaars, internships, is sitting at 801 million. The highest still being learnerships, even though it has reduced. Followed by artisans, and we are happy, and this is deliberate, we are committed to invest on artisans. The number is 1,000, but you can see the amount of value there, due to the value and the unit cost of artisans programs. The third ranking one, it will then be our bazaars. Bursaries, because of we commit to fund a learner over the multiple years, not only for 1 year. The fourth one is internships program in terms of the ranking. That's an overall budget for our learning interventions. Then enterprise development, we are committing 9.7 million. We do have strategic interventions, which range from developing qualifications, ensuring that we prepare the organization to transition into those qualifications, building that capacity. CEO spoke about the capacity to supply during his presentation, and making sure that we conduct credible research with the industry. We are budgeting about 10 million. Infrastructure development, which are the chairperson spoke about, where will you train these learners if you don't increase access? We've invested, budgeted around 75,000 to at least develop 3 skill centers in the next financial year. We also were deliberate to have a budget of plus around 200 million for strategic interventions, which includes your public colleges systems and other interventions that will support the national priorities, which will be your ERRP. It will be supporting your district development model. It will be supporting all other calls that we receive. Last year at this point, we were not aware that we'll have an economic reconstruction recovery plan. But when it was then tabled, we needed to support it. So it's for that reason that we leave a budget which will enable the SETA to respond to the national priorities. But we commit to our stakeholders that those interventions, they'll be in line with all other outcomes. It's not going to be outside our mandate. The overall budget that will be supporting our 23-24 annual performance plan, it will be around 1.1 billion. This then concludes my presentation. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. And now for the adoption of the Services SETA Annual Budget and Plan, we would like to call the Chairperson of the Accounting Authority, Mr. Stephen de Vries.
Thank you very much. I just want to acknowledge just the 2 persons that I saw that have joined us, but also one that I forgot in the beginning. The CEO, of the MSc SETA, Mr. Madibana. Thank you for joining us. And then the Deputy Chair of the CET College of the Western Cape is also with us, Mr. De Jong. So I sort of find some place somewhere there at the back. Now, I want to also thank Mama Bela when she mentioned the service providers, because I think that people might have worried when myself and the CEO was speaking that they were saying, hey, but it seems they're not speaking about us. But nothing can be delivered without the training providers. Whether it's directly through others, whether it's through the employer, but your role that you're going to play is not going to change. We're still going to need you in terms of that. I think there's opportunities as we are directed towards the assisting CETs with skills program. You will find that while we are busy with capacity building there will still be opportunities as funds are going to CETs that still there's a role for private providers to play, to assist them in terms of that. So we haven't forgot about you. You are an integral part of this whole system. It won't be able to continue without you. The last point that, just to mention again, the district development model, employers, you are here. Now this, you will find when government speaks in different ministers, they have different ways when they describe the district development model. But basically it's supposed to that each district in our country must have one plan. And then the plan of whatever development is going to take place within that district, including skills development for the area, is supposed to be there. So when those meetings are being called and the call on employers to be part of it, it's important that you are there so you can direct that one plan in terms of the skills that are needed in the area. Because otherwise, what is going to happen is that, again, we're going to have skills in your area or programs that's actually that we are not going to find employment. And I've seen that what is happening by departments, and I'm going to get into trouble, is that when they report on the district development model, they just divide the budget in terms of the current programs. But whether that was a need that was identified within that district, we don't know. But if the employees is not present when those meetings are taking place, unfortunately sometimes the government meetings are very long, we are again going to get it wrong. We're going to train people for unemployment. So I would like to encourage you to engage to make sure that when these plans are being developed, because there was one SETA that have the advert for a discretion window. And already because we directed to the district development model as an entity, it reads that your application must be aligned to the district development model of that district. So if it's not part of that district plan as a need, as a priority skill, your application is not going to be successful. So that's the importance. All districts, of course, we're not ready yet in terms of moving to that, but it's important that you start to engage in terms of that. Now let me deal with the matter that I was asked to come. Because I can speak about the district development model for the whole day. Mama Bele presented to us the annual budget and our annual budget and plan, and I'm here to ask for a mover and a seconder for the adoption of that plan. There's a mic there at the bottom, sorry, at the back. And the stakeholder want a mover and a seconder. That's the only tension part of having an AGM.
Kindly do mention your name, surname, and the organization that you're from. Thank you.
Good morning. Or is it afternoon? My name is Mabatus Kosana from Bika Cleaning Association. I move for the adoption of both the budget and the plan for 2022-2023.
Thank you.
Thank you. 24.
Good day. My name is Cecilia Muntle from Moreneke Letabo. For the second time this year, I second the budget.
Thank you very much, and I think that completes now my business. Over to the program.
Thank you. We will now ask Ms. Nana Shai from AGSA to give a report on the Auditor General on the Accounting Authority. Ms. Nana Shai.
Good afternoon. I think I'm still on time. Yes, good afternoon. My name is Nana Shai, and I will be presenting the audit outcomes of services SETA. And allow me to say all protocol observed. And Program Director, I would appreciate maybe perhaps if you can confirm that my presentation is visible so that I can continue with the presentation.
Nana, your presentation is not sharing
sure
yet.
If, I am audible
Now,
to the audience.
we do see your presentation. Thank you.
I would believe that I am. I will then continue. I think also just in the interest of time, I think the CFO had a slide earlier on during his presentation where he, in a nutshell, covered the audit action plan items. And as I go through my presentation, I'm going to cover 4 aspects that are contained in the audit report of the SETA, mainly being on financial statements, performance information, which also one of the executives, Ms. Motlamamabele, also touched on earlier, compliance, as well as the internal control aspects, which again, in the slide that the CFO presented a bit earlier, he touched on the issues. But again, just before I continue with the presentation, our mission as an office is to ensure that we exist to strengthen our country's democracy by enabling oversight, accountability, and governance in the public sector through auditing and thereby building public confidence. And our vision as the office is to be recognized by all our stakeholders as a relevant supreme audit institution that enhances public sector accountability. And this is one of the platforms that we believe as an office allows us to engage not only with the SETA management, not only with the SETA boards and audit committees that we engage on throughout the audit process, but also stakeholders that are users of the audit report of the SETA to be able to understand what the audit outcomes mean and how they can also play their part or role in ensuring that we support the entity in achieving on its strategic objectives. If I move on to the accountability ecosystem. So as an office, we are in the first year of implementation of our new strategy. So the hashtag there is Culture Shift 2030. So as a stakeholder and a role player as well, as an office, we see ourselves also instrumental in this accountability ecosystem, meaning that we are able to gain insights, to be able to influence processes, and to be able to enforce accountability where accountability is not being enforced. So if you look at this accountability ecosystem and you move from this left-hand side of the slide, we are talking about the officials. These are the people that are responsible for executing on their daily duties within the SETA themselves. These are the people that are implementing the strategy that has just been adopted to ensure that those targets that have been set in the strategic plan are being achieved and realized by the SETA. If you look at the role players like your audit committees, your internal audit function, senior management, as well as the executive authority, they also have a role to play in terms of ensuring that as we have committed ourselves to the aspirations of the strategic plan, we are monitoring then the implementation thereof and also then supporting the SETA from an executive authority perspective, being the Department of Higher Education, to ensure that those targets are also then realized. If you move on to the right-hand side of the slides, we are then talking about the coordinating ministries and the role that they play in ensuring that the targets and strategic objectives of the NDP, for example, as well, they're also realized because they are the documents that feed into the strategic plans of the entities and ensuring that they also live up to their mandates as well. So if you look at the accountability ecosystem, mainly what we are saying as an office is that each one of us needs to make sure that we play our role in ensuring that there is a realization of our country's aspirations and that we all are active citizens in this accountability ecosystem. And we are therefore accountable for each of our responsibilities and role that we play in ensuring that the SETA does realize also its aspirations in terms of the strategic plan. If I then go and unpack the audit outcomes, so on this slide is just a summary of the audit outcomes that one would obtain post the audit of the financial statements and annual performance information of an entity. And I'll just focus mainly on the middle block, the purple block, which is the qualified opinion, because that is the opinion that was expressed in the current financial statements for the SETA. So if one looks at the classification of a qualified audit opinion, so generally here one would classify the auditees as those that have the same challenges as those of the unqualified opinion with findings, but in addition, they could not produce credible or reliable financial statements. And when I do go through the presentation, I'll just unpack and further qualify it in terms of the area that we had qualified the services SETA on. So this would be an area where there was a material misstatement that has been identified. And again, it is a qualification in that we are almost expressing our opinion on and qualifying it only to that particular line item within the financial statements. Here is just a depiction of the audit history over the 3 financial years for the services SETA. So from 2019-20 up until 2021-22 financial year, the SETA has obtained a qualified audit opinion. So on the next slide, I'm just here giving a summary of the audit report paragraphs that have been disclosed in the annual report of the SETA. So here it speaks to the discretionary grants commitments. And I think the CFO, when he was presenting, he further unpacked the issues and highlighted what some of the issues are. And I think earlier on as well, when the chairperson was presenting in terms of his opening remarks, he did indicate the services SETA's journey in terms of dealing with the issue of discretionary grants commitments. So with that would come a lot of amendments and adjustments that need to go into the commitment schedule, which again, in the current financial year, unfortunately, we did not, in some instances, be able to obtain credible supporting evidence to then support some of the movements in the commitment schedule. So this did lead to the qualification that the SETA has, but it also reflects on the journey that, like I said, the CFO and the chairperson as well reflected on during their presentations in terms of the discretionary grants commitments. If I then move to the second aspect of the audit report, we then speak to the audit of the annual performance report, which is on specifically as an office, we scoped in the program 3, which is learning programs. So what you are seeing on the slide is just mainly the outcome or the findings, the material findings that we've included in the audit report in terms of program 3 learning programs only. So the first aspect touches on usefulness of the annual performance report. So this is where I think Ms. Motla in the presentation reflected, I think the CFO rather, reflected on the issue around the technical indicator description. So we had an issue around the usefulness in terms of the reported indicators for the completions, and this has then also led to the findings that we have included in the audit report. If one looks at reliability, here one is expressing whether or not credible supporting evidence was then provided. We only had 3 indicators that were impacted in the current financial year, which are those 3 indicators on the screen, which is the number of skills programs completed, the number of internships placement completions, as well as the number of learnership completions. So in terms of the root cause analysis, what we are highlighting is that there was just a cutoff issue when learners that have completed a learning intervention in the prior years are reported in the current year. So again, this is just the timing in terms of when these learners actually completed on the learning interventions. And the recommendation that we are making on that is that we just need to ensure that in terms of the technical indicator descriptions and what we report to, that there is an alignment between the two. And I think already highlighted in this session, we have had a conversation with the SETA during the phase when the audit action plan was developed in order to further engage and implement, or rather propose recommendations in terms of how to deal with this issue. If I go then to the third aspect of the audit report, we then report on compliance with legislation. So the 3 areas that were affected in the current year is the annual financial statements, expenditure management, the 2 areas rather. So in terms of the annual financial statements, here on the first bullet, we're reflecting on the submission of the Fs, and I think I will not dwell much on that. I think the CFO has already spoken to that. The second part then reflects on the fact that we are indicating that the annual financial statements were not prepared in accordance with the GRAP standards. And this is mainly linked to the audit outcome being a qualification on the discretionary grant commitments. So ordinarily we'll then bring in the non-compliance in terms of that the PFMA. Expenditure management, irregular expenditure. So majority of it was due to the discretionary grant support cost expenditure that exceeded the 7.5 limit and payments that were made in excess of the contract cost. So again, this non-compliance is also linked to the issues and findings that we had identified while we were auditing the commitment schedule of the SETA. The last part speaks to the fruitless and wasteful expenditure, which was not prevented, and payments were made for litigation, settlements for interest, and other costs. And I think the CFO again touched on it in his presentation around the litigations that unfortunately the SETA has been has obviously had the outcomes not being pronounced in their favor. So those are the fruitless and wasteful expenditure relating to either the settlement costs, interest that needed to also be paid, or on fruitless, being disclosed as fruitless and wasteful expenditure. This slide here just unpacks the irregular expenditure. It just again ties to my previous slide where I spoke around compliance. So those are the figures that are disclosed in the financial statements over the 2 years. Again, the highest contributor there again being the expenditure incurred of excess of the 7.5 limit of DG support costs, and the one in relation to the approved budget comes from the 2019-20 financial year, where the SETA had incurred in excess of its approved budgeted amount. Fruitless and wasteful expenditure over the 2 years. Again, this is linked to the interest. So here I'm just unpacking the figures, but it's the figures that have been disclosed in the financial statements of the SETA. So if one then goes and looks at the governance and internal control issues. So on the last part of the audit report, what we also then report on and cover as an office is what are then the internal control deficiencies that led to the issues that we have identified on the financial statements, either on the performance report, and lastly, either in the area of compliance. So if one looks at the action plans to address internal control deficiencies, I think already when the CFO was also presenting, it touched on what is then the SETA doing to address the audit findings that we have reported in the 2021-2022 audit report. And I think one of the key things that came from the review or assessment of the audit action plan from the prior year was that it was in place, it was developed, but obviously the implementation thereof was not effective in that it needed to move the SETA out of the qualification area. But I think we are in the process of now developing a new action plan. We are now in the process of implementing this new action plan, and we are in the process of now already starting to audit the prior year qualification areas. Regular, accurate, and complete financial and performance report. This speaks to the issues that I've already touched on in terms of what led to the qualification on the discretionary grant commitments, performance information, the issues that impacted on the usefulness and reliability of the annual performance report. And here we're just highlighting that there needs to be regular and accurate and complete financial reports that obviously speak to the underlying records obtained in the entity. Daily and monthly processing and reconciling of transactions. Again, this speaks to just the qualification areas. Again, these are the disciplines that we are identifying as the deficiencies that could have been implemented at the time to try and deal with some of the issues around the discretionary grant commitments. For example, reconciling it to the underlying records and ensuring that whatever is disclosed in the financial statements is accurate and complete. So these are the daily and monthly processing and reconciling disciplines that we had identified as a deficiency. Compliance monitoring, again, I will not reiterate. This speaks to the compliance issues that I've reflected on in my earlier slides. In terms of the key recommendations, and I think in line with the action plan that has already been presented to everybody on the platform, what we are proposing as the AGSA is that one, there needs to be a detailed root cause analysis in terms of all the findings that we would have issued, not necessarily only focusing on the material ones that would have led either to the qualification or the material findings that were issued on performance information, but rather unpacking each and every item of the audit findings that are contained in the management report in order to understand what are the deficiencies in the environment that have led to the finding being raised. Secondly, this process will then allow us to, as a SETA, to then enhance the preventative and detective internal control activities and also further intensify and enhance those financial disciplines that I spoke to earlier. The third element is to then ensure that the monitoring on the implementation of the audit action plan activities as well is also closely monitored and by the executives, by those charged with governance for oversight purposes. But also, I think the key being that the implementation needs to be effective in that it needs to result in a positive outcome for the SETA. Lastly, intensify the review processes on financial reports, again supporting information. This is just mainly on around the financial statements. I think the biggest item for the SETA is the discretionary grants item. And for us to be able to successfully go over that hurdle, we just need to make sure that from a supporting evidence perspective, from the underlying perspective, from the daily, monthly reconciliation processes, that we intensify those processes and make sure that by the time we report and disclose on the balance of the commitments that we have in the financial statements, that those processes have been implemented adequately and there was thorough review from that process, and think that will then enable us as a SETA to be able to move from the qualification and obviously obtain then a positive audit outcome. I think this will bring me then to the end of my presentation, and thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Ms. Shai. We will now move to our questions and answers session, which will be facilitated by our program director, Ms. Julia Nzimande.
I'm back. I just Googled a little bit just to find out what makes somebody a good program director. And one of the things was it sets the tone, or she or he sets the tone for the event. And I think I did so. I mean, the speakers, the presentations, yeah, you know, you can applaud for yourself. The presentations, even time, because it's that video that's, you know, the extra 20, but thank you so much. Thank you so much from the Auditor General, of course. Thank you so much to all our speakers, from the CFO, CEO, and my chairperson. And now, I hope I continue to set the tone and it doesn't erupt in total chaos. I'm gonna handle the question and answer, right? So I'd like you to stand up, your name and organization when you have a question. Keep it short. Just look at me, remind it, short. And those are the questions for people in the room. I will take 3 questions and then I will allow, I can see it already feverishly going through the questions that were posted on the chat box. I'll allow our board members to answer. I would also like our board members to write down and scribe some of the questions. Yes, we're here to do something. So that we take it home and we deliberate, reflect on it. Like we said during our presentations, or during the presentations, this is why we're here with you, and we find it important to engage with you. So the ushers, are the mics ready? Please raise your hands. 1, 2. Yes.
Good
Thank you,
evening.
Asatia.
My name is Ntombi Lekopotse from Tenant Union of South Africa. A question I would like to pose to Service SETA is, I heard that you were speaking aggressively about entrepreneurship. My question is, do you have a strategy in place in how are you going to tackle training individuals in the entrepreneurship, specifically, you know, in all the industries that are different, that people may find themselves, you know, being interested in? And again, the 2 key things that I find the youth, perhaps they are businesses, rather, they are eager to become entrepreneurs, but there are 2 key points that they are struggling in, which is the legal aspect of the industries that they want to go in, and the financial understanding. That's the 2 key things that perhaps if when you are training these individuals, you would like to refine, so that, you know, we don't have perhaps the youth finding themselves having these certificates but not being able to use them, in a very aggressive manner, because I think the objective is you would like the youth to have 5 years to come, someone that you've trained, that 5 years to come their business are relevant, and 10 years to come, you want them to have a turnover of more than $1 million. I think that's the objective for SETA. So that's my main question. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Question number 2. Please always get the mic.
Thank you very much, Program Director. My apologies. I see that there are no comments. It says question and answers. I would like to add comments.
Okay.
And thank you very much for the insightful information, because at times when you communicate with the SETA stakeholders themselves, at times when they respond to you as an employer, you feel like, oh, they just don't want to give us the information, or they just don't want to fund us, but not knowing the inside of what is happening in there. At the same time, and thank you for the honesty of the non-submission, the late submission of your annual financial statement, and let's hope that never happens again. My name is Irene Kliana from Value Logistics, representing the employer. I have a few questions. I'm not sure if I'm going to be short, because this is very close to my heart. This is something that is a burning issue. Okay, first of all, as an employer, we have picked up that we have a workforce that needs some capacitation, of which when we do that, we need some little bit of assistance in terms of funding. So looking at the IR that is now consuming our businesses, our employees are now really desperate for some capacitation, of which we are busy doing that. And in doing that, we also, oh, please, I don't want to see myself. Okay, sorry. I got distracted when I saw myself there. Sorry about that. So basically, in terms of the IR, we have the learnership programs, employed learnership programs that we put in place in order for us to capacitate our employees with the objective of getting our workforce not to be redundant and be able to move them around in our workplaces. Something else that I would like to also suggest in terms of the WSP submission, I heard that the plan is to increase the submission of the WSP. But in terms of submission of the WSP, if we look at what we went through in terms of the COVID, the pandemic, we need to look into maybe increasing the support in those stakeholders that could not submit the WSP, because there is a lot of challenges that they've encountered. We just need to have a look at that. And lastly, not least, is our internship program. We do offer internship program to unemployed, and in our employment contract, it says in completion of your internship, you are permanently employed. So these are the things that we do for our unemployed learners. And I saw that there is a decrease in the allocation of your programs. I'm sorry, Program Director, I'm finishing. I saw that there's a decrease, and which is a concern for me, because if we get in the decrease on the aspect that are really assisting us the most, these learners, we're investing on them because they're really assisting our business. We developing the skill, we're investing, and we're hoping that when we invest, it can also benefit us as well. So that decrease, I hope it doesn't affect us that much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for those questions. I've learned one trick. If you want people to keep it short, camera on them. I'll do that next time. All right, CEO and Chairperson, the CEO, are we ready to answer the questions? I think, shall we start with the questions in the room, or just quickly in Tombi's question in regard to entrepreneurship? There's the mic. I'm staying on the stage. I'm not leaving. I love this place.
Thank you very much. Maybe Program Director, let me have a mini conference, because I've got a couple of questions from the chat as well that I need to go
the
through.
5 questions, yeah.
But let me start responding to the questions in the room. Sis Ntombi, thank you for for the comment and the question about entrepreneurship. And the issue about the entrepreneurship strategy, I'm not too sure if we have found the solution as a country as yet. We thought that putting unemployed youth into a classroom and train them on entrepreneurship will take us somewhere. During the National Skills Development Strategy number 3, it proved to be non-productive. We did not get any benefit. During the current strategy, we are looking at the development of entrepreneurs, which becomes a different and also tricky, because we are still behaving like training companies. We still want to take a saloon owner and take them out of the saloon and put them into a classroom for 3 weeks or 6 weeks, and it's proving to be very, very difficult. We are fortunate at the services also have our main stakeholder being management and business services, which basically they do some consulting work. But we are going to be having certain programs that will be partnering with our stakeholders in the management and business services, and to try and help our other stakeholders, especially that are run by the in the SMMEs format, because we do have plenty of them that can benefit from the skills from the other end. But we're trying to find the practical mix that, while you not disrupting the the beneficiaries' workplace, but you are able to develop them. And one thing that came out very clear in our discussions with the SMMEs is that coaching and mentoring and understanding their key needs, which is basically business or entrepreneur support, is most effective in ensuring that they grow and their business is becoming more sustainable, and as they grow, they are able to create employment themselves. It's a very, I would say, important intervention, but what I learned during the TVET summit was that as much as we are obsessed about giving our youth certificates, but we should be more concerned about giving the SMMEs, especially the entrepreneurs, skills. So getting that balance is a little bit of the trick, because when you want to give somebody certificates, you make the rules. But when you want to give someone skill, you need to understand them so that you can help them through. So that's a very difficult strategy to come up with, but we are working on it through our unit in strategic partnerships and together with the chambers. Thank you. The second question, thank you, Sis Irene, with your comment. We are a SETA that I will say it's very challenged, because again, we've got a large number of small employers, meaning that they don't have all your standard departments you will find in a normal company. So when it comes to submission of WSPs, it has always been a problem. That's why even in our presentation, we are reflecting the difficulty that our stakeholders experience in submitting the WSPs that are compliant. The board has already approved the project that we target those that submitted in the previous financial year, and that we basically capacitate them so that come the 2023 window, they are able to submit compliant WSPs. We are not doing this within the 5% target that we are talking about. We just expressed, I think it's important that we capacitate our own stakeholders to be able to contribute towards skills development. I think the most important thing here that I need to make sure that I mention, it's not like we are targeting giving our stakeholders money. We want our stakeholders to contribute in skills development in the sector. So we are very much interested in the skills development interventions that you are coming up with. So we believe that the talk about windows and money grants coming from the SETA won't be an issue if you get your mandatory grants back, because that's the money that intentionally you should be utilizing it to fund your training interventions. On the question of internships, I think I spoke about one biggest elephant in the room called youth unemployment earlier. We have targets which you might have noted that maybe they are going down because of the university qualifications that relate to the sector. That does not require a workplace afterwards. But the interventions that we are making outside the APP, they are transformation related. We want to contribute in reducing youth unemployment. That's why we have been also allowed or given permission by the board to find ways that will contribute in reducing youth unemployment. The practical one that we have already came up with is that we've got almost more than 300,000 learners of TVETs that are waiting for their work placements. And that's unemployment in its own, because they are neither at classroom nor at workplace. So those are our target audience. We are already having databases of those learners from a couple of TVETs, but we are calling you employers to open your workplaces so that we can align your workplaces with those TVET learners so that they can be able to graduate. And it's a very, very important intervention, not just for services SETA, but for the entire PSET sector as well. I received a couple of questions from the chat. I'm not too sure if I'm going to be able to answer all of them, Program Director, but I just want to deal with the ones that I think the presentation did not take care of them. It's Mr. or Miss Director Kululeko that wrote on the chat. She or he is raising an issue about the learners that need to be de-enrolled. Can I suggest that maybe you write an email, can write it directly to my office, because it looked like it's an operational issue that it could only be dealt with by the Department of Core Business once they get adequate information. I also got a suggestion from Cashel Harris. Is basically suggesting that a services SETA develop a booking system so that the skills development providers can schedule their own external moderations in advance. We will again, we will look into that. It's a very important comment, and we will try and incorporate that when we look at improving our business processes. We also received a comment or a question from Bennett Bilusa requesting that we need to fast track the issue of accreditation of skills development providers. I cannot agree more. We are so dependent on skills development providers for us to implement our programs. We must also remember that there are some changes within the PSET system, which now includes the QCTO process. We are working very closely with them in making sure that we don't end up with some disruptions in our program implementation because we don't have enough skills development providers. There is a question from Steph Ewuzu, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly, is asking about the end user computing project awarded in 2017, 2018. We are of the view that we have engaged the entities that were awarded those projects. If you have not been engaged, again, feel free to send an email to me, because there's a team that is working with entities that they were awarded user computing. But in general terms, we have been working with the entities and trying to find if there are other suitable programs that they're in a position to implement. But I must mention that there were a couple of entities, by the time we started the process, they were already deregistered by the CIPC. So if you were already deregistered by CIPC, we could not engage with you in that particular area. I think Ms. Nontantla Dube asked a couple of questions, including that we say we are supporting internships. However, our window does not include internships. The window that we open is very specific and is very deliberate. It talks to us piloting occupational qualifications. And we have not opened the window for internships, because currently in our commitment, we've got enough programs that talks to internships. The other comment or question, Ms. Dube was saying 65,000 for NSDP 2030 up to 2025, it's a low number. We will look at that. As we go along, we keep on reviewing our targets, and we plan for what is informed by what is happening in the market and what we as a SETA we are able to deliver. Program Director, I think let me hand it over the microphone. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you for the questions. And of course, CEO, thank you for your excellent answers. In the room, any hands, any questions, any comments? Please, let's, like I said, this is my favorite part, right? This is where the chaos starts. Not today, not today.
Okay, good day, everyone. My name is Philip Dow, the Secretary General for IACSA Employers Association for Hairdressing and Cosmetology in South Africa. And predominantly our members are Afro artisans. My question is based on, but before my question, I just want to congratulate SETA for their 80% performance. And then my question is based on workplace and the struggle with compliance for workplaces. And then my question is that what is SETA turnaround strategy to ensure that workplaces are compliant for learners, because it's been a challenge even with us as organization. As you can see with the situation around hair and beauty industry, where we have a lot of influx and then we can't control it. And then number two, the question number two is that have you ever engaged with organizations like multi-stakeholders engagement like municipality, because you cannot do, you cannot address compliance without municipalities and the challenges that are within the hairdressing and beauty. So have you ever engaged with organizations and then maybe the distillers, the municipality and all the organization involved in hair and beauty? Thank you.
Thank you for that question. CEO, my favorite sector.
Why don't you answer Program Director, because you've got all the answers on it.
No. I'm the Program Director. I just make sure that there's a flow. That's what I do.
Okay. No, thank you. The entire approach on delivering occupational qualifications, it's an integrated one. We've learned that we cannot deal with the challenges from one particular angle. As we said, when we talked about the strategy itself, it dictates to us that we should have quality workplaces. I'm sure you know very well in this country we don't even have quality accommodation, so it becomes a very, very difficult thing to do. The chairperson earlier spoke about the district development model. We had instances where we said, even if we are dealing with a program of general rural development, it makes sense to implement the program via the district district development structure, because it takes you straight to the municipality. And the municipality themselves, they do their own IDPs where they define what is it that is required in their own area. So then you start to align the interventions with what is relevant in that particular area. We know the constraints that are coming up with compliance, and we also know the constraints that are brought about just by the normal business standards that they build indirect constraint. However, we had to double and check it up. If I may just digress, we had a project with UCT that talks about hair. And when you deal with that particular program, the biggest risks are health risks, especially in the hairdressing industry. And the side effects of ignoring the very expensive compliance processes, when it looks to health side effects, it becomes very, very difficult. But we know that the industry that we currently run in South Africa does not have the means to comply. But when that doesn't happen, it also puts the lives of their own clients at risk. So the discussion, it's not a very, very easy one. We might have donated 4 mobile hairdressing containers, but that doesn't solve the problem. But what it does, it was demonstrating the kind of a facility that you should have if you run the salon that ticks the boxes. But we are nowhere in making an impact. Hence we were saying communication of careers, it's not gonna be enough in the next 5 to 10 years. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO. I hope that answers your question, and I also know your chair is a member of the chamber, so thank you very much. I was told that this was the last question I could take from the House, unfortunately, but we'll meet each other, so we'll see each other afterwards. People online don't know this, that there's lovely lunch for us. It's waiting for us. One of the things that they also said, what makes a good program director, is that you need to prepare to improvise. I didn't need to do that. There was also no chaos, because they say one of the things that I must also be able to handle is microphone etiquette. So I was hoping that I would have to intervene with, the mic, but none of that happened. And then they also said what I needed to have is a good closing speech prepared. And I know I don't have to have that, because my veteran partner, member, yes, he's a veteran member, that's what I meant, and mentor, is going to give you a vote of thanks and a closing speech. Mine is just to say thank you very much for being nice to me today, and all I have to say is goodbye.
I think we must always come to this venue and ask you to be a program director. You are just program director, conducting the affairs today professionally like you did. Chairman, Mr. De Vries, the CEO and the executives, the AA members, the chairman of the audit committee, Men Nanashai from the Auditor General, Mr. Mudau, Ntate Matebane, Mr. Theisman. I hope I've got the names correct. Thank you very much for being here to grace this occasion. Chairman, I could do this job in 1 minute and use 2 words to say thank you, and then that will be it. I notice that there's lunch here outside, and we have been seated for almost 4 hours, and that is very cruel. But I want to add more pain to your frustration. And say a few words as I thank everybody that participated here, starting with the chairman. The AA members, did I greet you as well? You are special. You get a special greeting. These 2 seconds are devoted to you. My AA members, hello. The chairman reminded us of the following issues. I'll just run quickly over them. He says out in Western Province and Gauteng, the COVID is resurfacing one more time. So we should take precautions. We know what to do. We've been through that route. He indicated the impact of Russia-Ukraine war has got an impact on our economy. We should work harder to avert that. He was boastful to indicate that we achieved 80% performance, and he credited this to the participation of stakeholders. Well done, stakeholders. SMEs development, that we have enrolled about 900 students. He also focused on the 5 strategic focus area, and that will be the inter-SETA collaboration, the work placement with levy-paying industries, organizational monitoring, NSDP 2030, and also emphasize that we need to work with community CET colleges and the TVET colleges. He talked about governance and complimented the chambers for cementing the relationships with the stakeholders, and also congratulated the chamber chairman for working as a unit and also modifying the standard agenda that we have to make sure that everybody is an active participant in all the meetings. Thank you, Chairman, for pronouncing that there should be a body, and you have just put the skeleton there. And the CEO came in to put more flesh onto this skeleton. And he talked about our vision, mission, and values, and touched about service delivery, environment, external factors. Talked about social issues that will involve unemployment, inequalities, and poverty. The CEO talked about organizational performance, talked about transformation imperatives, and performance highlights. He also talked about DG activation, and spoke about the future, the NSDP 2030, and the 8 outcomes that relates to it. And he proudly displayed a bus or a truck. And we were all excited that it is moving. And it is an electrical truck, no noise, it just moves, electrical. I wonder with the load shedding whether it is really going to move. The CEO talked about occupational qualification and also talked about success factors. And short-term focus areas. We thank you, CEO, for putting the meat onto this body. It is no longer alive, this body, but it has got bones, it has got the meat, the flesh. The CFO came in, Datetsola Matsebe, spoke about the statement of financial position. He said the economy is recovering because more levy-paying entities are coming in with big bags full of money. We're happy. He touched on the income statement, that the revenue is also recovering. Statutory disclosures, he mentioned. He talked about the audit action plan and 5 audit findings and illustrated them as DG commitments, late annual financial statement, fruitless expenditure, irregular expenditure, usefulness of performance information. He has massaged those parts of this body so that when it is finally alive, it can walk. Thank you very much, CFO. And then came Queen Mamabele Motle, spoke about the strategic outcome indicators, targets, with outcome number 1, to enhance organizational capabilities. Outcome 2, enhance mechanism for effective scale planning. Outcome number 3, promote access to technical and professional skills. Number 4, enhance quality assurance role. She spoke about the APP 2023-24, touching administration, skills planning, learning program, quality, and so forth. And also talked about the budget and did comprehensive analysis of that budget. We thank you, Mayor, for blowing air into this body. You have given life to it. Mothers give life, and thank you very much. Then came Mayor Nana Shai. Welcome, Mayor. And she spoke about their mission and vision, accountability ecosystem. She spoke about audit outcomes, annual performance report. She gave us the recommendations, which I'm not going to repeat here. We thank you, Mayor, for making sure that this body behaves accordingly. It is up to us as stakeholders to make sure that we nourish this body so that we can achieve as expected. With those few words, I would love to say thank you very much for coming. Thank you very much for your participation. And thank you for giving me your listening ears. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. As you could notice through our presentation, we do have a globe That's because one of the change drivers for this year is globalization. We hope to take you on a trip around the globe. Outside our lunch areas, we do have an Indian station, we do have a Chinese station, Loga Lesleka, South African station, and then you can go to Italy. So wherever you go, enjoy your meal. You are free to enjoy the view of Johannesburg outside or come back inside to have your lunch. Thank you very much for joining us and enjoy your lunch.